right. Bangs are banging. Bangs are banging. Hello friends, welcome back to another video. My name is Kimberly. I am an illustrator and a writer, and I love sharing bookish content here on YouTube. If you watched my last video, what I've been cozy book reads that I've been reading, I completely forgot to introduce myself. When I was editing, I was like, you didn't even say your name. So I'm sorry about that if you watched that video, but my name is Kimberly, like I mentioned. I am an illustrator, I am a writer. Feel free to check out my work over on my Instagram. That's mostly where I post all of my stuff. I'm trying to get more active on TikTok, but it is a lot handling different various social media platforms. So bear with me, I'm still trying to get used to doing YouTube again. I was gone for a few weeks, so I'm trying to get back on my rhythm. But anyways, I want to share some books that one that I currently finished reading, and then maybe two. I have two on here that I'm having a hard time deciding what I want to read next, and I want to share with you all also an audiobook that I've been listening to. So oops, sorry, Dobby, I just hit my dog. Dobby's here once again, making a beautiful appearance. He is my book companion, so okay, I forgot to mention that this is the beginning of a reading vlog. I'm hoping to make it a reading vlog, so we'll see how this turns out. But yes, I already finished reading a book, so I just kind of want to talk about it and tell you what I thought about the book. And the book that I just literally wrapped up is called Cia Martinez and the Moonlit Beginning of Everything by Raquel Vasquez Gilliand. I absolutely love this cover. It has like this little metallic sort of finish to it, and anything that has cactuses I am here for. I also want to say a huge shout out to Johanna Perdomo, who goes by Chula Domo on Instagram, for sending me this book by Raquel Vasquez, and also this one. She sent these to me last year, but I have not gotten around to reading them. And finally, once I got out of my reading slump this year, I was like, you know what? These are totally calling for me. And so I picked this one up. So I started reading this one. I have yet to read this one, but I just brought it so I could show you all. They're both by Raquel Vasquez. I am so excited. But let's talk about this one. I was so excited when I got these in the mail. I had no idea that Johanna was sending these to me. It was a complete surprise when I received them. She was so sweet. I remember we were talking over on Instagram, and I commented on one of her stories about how I had completely forgotten to purchase these books. I had them on my TBR, and I kept saying that I was going to purchase the books, and I never got around to it, and I completely forgot about them until Johanna posted them on her stories, and I came across her story, and I was like, OMG, I need to get those books. Thank you for reminding me. And the next thing you know, they arrive at my doorstep, and that was just the sweetest thing ever. No one has ever sent me books before, and this is not to say that anyone should. It was just so sweet. It was the sweetest thing. I completely didn't expect it. So Johanna, if you're watching this, muchos thank yous, muchos thank yous. I really, really appreciated it. But let's talk about Cia Martinez and the Moonlit Beginning of Everything. This book was wow. The first thing I need to say is that I absolutely love Raquel Vasquez writing style. I believe I read a little bit about her background, and she is actually a poet. So her writing style was very much sort of prose. It was very much written in a prose style. Like a lot of her chapters were probably like this one, for example, very little. And it's really like a little prose sort of poetry before getting you on to the next chapter. I am a poetry writer. I'm also a poet. And I really love this. And I sometimes get really anxious into, or I just get a little nervous going into a book because sometimes the chapters are like this thick, and so I'm someone that likes to completely finish a chapter before bookmarking it and putting my book down if I need to. And so sometimes I just don't like leaving it halfway. And so the thing with this style of writing is that the chapters are really short, and so you can really take breaks if you need to and not kind of leave halfway in the middle of the book, if that makes sense. Anyways, that's just like a little side note that I really appreciated, plus these little mini chapters before getting onto the bigger chapter. It just added a sort of reflection before getting onto the chunkier chapter. It wasn't necessarily, I mean, it was a chapter on its own, but it really offered a lot of, like, most of these little chapters were like something that the main character was either thinking, feeling, and that really gave you like another sense. It just made you feel more connected to the story. It made you visualize what the character was thinking, going through, and for me it just offered like a deeper connection. So I really felt for Cia Martinez. But anyways, let's talk about what that book was actually about. This book, I believe, is, I don't know what it's classified as, but it is sort of a fictional book. Though a lot of the stuff that is on here I feel could actually happen in real life if you are someone who believes in aliens like I do. But yeah, aliens in this book. There's also a lot of important and hard conversations around deportation, around racism, bigotry, and someone who is a Chicana, a Latina like me. It was really hard to read through some of these chapters because a lot of what Cia was encountering in this book, I've also encountered. I've had family members be deported. In this book, her mom gets deported. I'm jumping ahead of myself. Let me actually tell you all what this book was about. The book follows Cia Martinez, and Cia Martinez is in high school and her mom ends up getting deported. She ends up getting deported by this racist local cop, and her mom ends up being deported. She's in Mexico for about 2 years, and then one day her mom decides to finally come back to the United States. Cia's dad tries to tell her, no, don't come back, you know, it's not safe, but she ends up doing it anyways. Cia's mom ends up kind of venturing on her own to try and make it through the desert to come back to where Cia and her dad are currently living, which I believe is, I think it's in Arizona. Cia's mom never makes it back, and she thinks that maybe she died, but she never truly knows what happened to her. Cia is also a seer. That's what we call it in my culture, someone who can hear, feel, and see someone who has passed away. Cia's grandmother passed away, so she's always having conversations with her grandmother, which I thought was really nice. I really felt the cultural background, the Latinx cultural background really depicted on this book, which I absolutely adored. So her mom does end up making it back, and that's like really not a spoiler because you could read it on here. She does end up making it back in this weird spaceship that just appears. So Cia goes very often to the desert to light candles for her mom, which to her they signify for her mom to find her way back home. And then one day when she's out there, and she does this pretty often, but one day when she's out there, she sees these blue lights in the sky, these triangular blue lights in the sky. And at first she's kind of like, well, what was that? And then one day they appear again, and the lights end up getting closer and closer and closer until she realizes that it's actually a spaceship, and inside of this spaceship is her mom. That was kind of a shocker, but once again, you can kind of read it on there. On the background it does say that, but once like you're actually reading it, you're just like, whoa. Her mom is in a spaceship, and she ends up coming back to Cia and tells her what is happening, and then they go on the run because some other stuff ends up happening. So to say that this book kept me on my toes is not enough, because it really kept me on my toes. And there's also a beautiful romance that develops between Cia and the new boy in town. I also really enjoyed the friendship that Cia has with her best friend, whose name is Rose. I feel like I really enjoyed this book also because the topic of deportation and racism, bigotry is really a hard topic to talk about. It is very traumatic. I know when I was reading this book, it was a little bit triggering, especially since I myself have encountered, not me myself, but I've had family members who have gone through deportation, my parents who fled their country to come here. A lot of the talk here was a little bit triggering, but I feel like it was a beautiful storyline that also mixed fantasy in there to be able to talk about such a heavy topic. And this is not to say that this topic has to be watered down or fed to us in a certain way, because we should all know exactly what is going on, especially with ICE raids happening, with kids in cages happening, deportations constantly happening. We should not be fed a watered down version of what is actually real. And I feel like this book did not hold back. I felt like everything that the author was saying in the book, how she was explaining what Sia was feeling, the racism in the town, it was very much real. Like, I did not feel like it was sugar-coated in any way. So I really appreciated that. But the mix in fantasy about aliens and the bigger story about that, which I don't want to give away if you do intend on reading this book, also added a twist to it that made it, I don't want to say enjoyable, but just thrilling in a way that you kept rooting for this family to reunite. You kept rooting for Sia to reunite with her mother, because you could really tell the bond that she has with her mom. That's all I'm gonna say, because I don't want to keep yapping about it. But I did give this book, I believe, a 4 out of 5. I just put this book down, I believe, yesterday, so that was really exciting. So that's what I just finished reading. I don't think I'm going to read this one right away, How Moonfuentes Fell in Love with the Universe. I think I'll probably wait a little bit deeper in the spring to read this book. Definitely, I am a huge fan of Raquel Vasquez Gillian and her writing style. I love it. I really resonated with that style of writing. So if you're someone that doesn't enjoy like breaks in chapters or like more prose added to a novel, then maybe this book will not be for you. But if you're someone that also enjoys beautiful prose that really makes you, I don't know, escape and resonate with the protagonist, then you'll really enjoy Raquel Vasquez Gillian's writing style. So highly recommend. The next book that I'm actually reading is an audiobook. So I was literally today years old when I discovered Libby. I mean, I've had Libby. It was like one of those apps that I heard about and I downloaded it on my phone and I completely forgot about it. So I am now currently using Libby and I'm obsessed with audiobooks now. I got a library card from my local library. I filled out the application online and I immediately got an e-card library sent to me, and that is what I used to attach to my Libby. If you don't know what Libby is pretty much a platform where you can connect your library card and either listen to audiobooks or read books by renting them on the app. So you can like read it on your phone, or if you have a tablet, you can read it on your tablet as well. And all you need is a library card and you pretty much could read it or hear it for free. So I'm currently obsessed with audiobooks because I'm just like, wow, this really sounds like a podcast. And I'm someone as an illustrator who sits in her desk a lot, and sometimes I either put something in the background on my computer and that's it. And so I figured that instead of doing all that, I could just be listening to an audiobook in the background while I'm illustrating or working on whatever. So the book that I am currently listening to is called River Woman, River Demon by Jennifer Givan, and this is it right here. To be honest, I had not even heard about this book prior to just seeing it on Libby. I was just kind of skimming through audiobooks that they had available in that moment, and then this one came up and I was just like, whoa, that sounds interesting. Plus this cover is absolutely gorgeous. It's just so dark and mysterious. This is pretty much, from what I read, a psychological thriller with roots in Mexican folklore. And once I read kind of like the bio, I was just like hooked. Currently on the audiobook, I am on chapter 21, but I just kind of want to read to you what the bio on this book says. It says here, when Eva's husband is arrested for the murder of a friend, she must confront her murky past and embrace her magic to find out what really happened the night on the river. Eva Santos Moon is a burgeoning Chicana artist who practices the ancient spiritual ways of brujeria and curanderismo. But she's at one of her lowest points, suffering from disorienting blackouts, creative stagnation, and a feeling of disconnect from her magical roots. When her husband, a beloved university professor and the glue that holds their family together, is taken into custody for the shocking murder of their friend, Eva doesn't know whom to trust, least of all herself. She soon falls under suspicion as a potential suspect, and her past rises to the surface, dredging up the truth about an eerily similar death from her childhood. Struggling with fragmented memories and self-doubt and increasingly terrified, Eva fears that she might have been involved in both murders, but why doesn't she remember? Only the dead women know for sure, and they're coming for her with a haunting vengeance, and she fights to keep her family out of danger. Eva realizes she must use her magic as a bruja to protect herself and her loved ones while confronting her own dark history. A psychological thriller that weaves together the threads of folk magic with personal and cultural empowerment. River Woman, River Demon is a mysterious incantation of reckoning with the past and claiming one's unique power and voice. As you can tell, that is why I got pulled to listen to this book. I will say be sure to read the trigger warnings before reading this, because there is a lot of like substance abuse in this book. That was something that I didn't look up, and so when I started reading it I was like, okay. But it is a really, so far it's a really good book. I've never really read a book with a sort of faulted main character, you know, who is not perfect, who is actually struggling with something deep and hard, because the main character, Eva, is the one that suffers from substance abuse. You know, you kind of feel for her and what she's going through, as well as navigating her substance abuse. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Now the next two books that I'm kind of fighting to, I don't know which one to read next, is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana, and also Woman of Light by Kali Fajardo Anstein. Beautiful cover. Both of these are beautiful covers, but totally different. This is more of a nonfiction book, I believe, and this is more of a fictional book. I did read like the first chapter of this last night, and kind of having a hard time getting into it. I don't know if it's because on my last video that I shared, my cozy books that I've read, I read a lot of like witchy books, and it seems like right now I am not in it right now, which is weird because I am a huge fantasy reader. In light of just reading Latinx authors, I feel like I'm just gonna go with Kali Fajardo Anstein, who is herself a Latin writer. So I feel like I'm just going to maybe read this one. I feel like this is the one I'm gonna end up reading. But it says here, Luz Little Light Lopez, a tea leaf reader in Londres, is left to fend for herself after her older brother Diego, a snake charmer and factory worker, is run out of town by a violent white mob. As Luz navigates 1930s Denver, she begins to have visions that transport her to her indigenous homeland in the nearby Lost Territory. Luz recollects her ancestors' origins, how her family flourished, and how they were threatened. She bears witness to the sinister forces that have devastated her people and their homelands for generations. In the end, it is up to Luz to save her family's stories from disappearing into oblivion. I deeply resonate with the storyline of this book, because as someone who's also been on a journey to recollect the stories of my ancestors and heal generational trauma and just reconnect with my ancestral roots, I feel like that's a journey that many of us are on as we awaken to this society that really just, a lot of us are realizing that it just doesn't resonate with who we are. I feel that this is gonna be a great book. So I'm gonna stop yapping and get to work. I think I'm gonna listen to my audiobook and do some work that I need to get done on my computer, and we'll get into it, yeah? Okay, let's go.
through this. The detective didn't keep the magazine featuring Bobak and Cecilia's kiss, but gave it back to me before we left the station, expected of someone who lived so crackling. Even if that vivacity had spilled over to seducing other women's husbands. The one shimmering flash among the ashen monotony. Shitty than magic, I suppose. This health kick Sammy's got me on. Sammy was always strong to tummy tuck.
We find ourselves starting from scratch, brick by brick.
At the end of the exercise video, I'm supposed to lie on the yoga mat and fly on the
No path carved out for us now. The brush is thick.
I see myself now through Jocelyn's words, not pushing karma into the mud.
All I'm asking now, don't give up on love. Don't give up. Don't give up on love. I know that you're tired, my love, but please don't go. There's valleys and mountain tops on this rocky road. All I'm asking now, don't give up on love. Don't give up. Don't give up on love. In sickness or health, for richer, for poor.
So it's been a few days already since I finished River Woman, River Demon. I completely forgot to give a little overview of what I thought about the novel. Overall, I really enjoyed the book. I think psychological thrillers, especially since I am very new to expanding my reading taste outside of fiction, I felt that this particular psychological thriller really kept me on my toes and I was really engaged with the story. Like I mentioned before, we are following a flawed character. So if you're someone that likes to read about characters that have it all together, that are very pristine, and they're on a particular route, then this book will probably not be for you because our character in this novel is very much flawed. Like I mentioned, there is talk of addiction. The character makes lots of mistakes. She goes on a path that will piss you off. In many instances, I was just like, what are you doing, girl? Come on, let's get it together. But for me, and personally, I was very much rooting for the character. I did read a lot of controversy on the book saying that our main character was like a bad mother. Personally, for me, I really felt for the character. She was someone that you could tell had suffered with a lot of trauma, and sometimes that trauma allow her to make clear decisions. But at the end, I felt that the character really did push through and was able to make light out of the circumstances that she was in. In this book, we were following our main character who had suffered through a very traumatic experience when she was young. One of her best friends drowned while she was playing with her in the river, and we follow her through her adult life where that past continues to haunt her. So she continues to have lots of blackouts where she experiences moments where she doesn't remember certain things that have happened, things that just happened like the day before, the week before, and she just cannot remember. And so one day her husband actually gets accused of murder. He is accused of killing both of their best friend, who is a woman. She was drowned, and they are pinpointing it on our main character's husband. However, our main character keeps having little blackouts where she even is questioning herself whether she was the one that might have done something, whether that was when she was a little kid with her best friend drowning, or now with her friend as an adult who also drowned or was killed in the water. She keeps having these blackouts, and she's questioning whether she might have done something because she cannot remember certain things that happened. I also absolutely loved that this story was based in Latin curanderismo, folklore, healing type of context. I love reading about the healing arts, especially healing arts that comes from my indigenous roots. In the book, the main character is a healer herself, as well as her husband. And her husband actually has a spiritual store where they sell healing tools. Overall, the storyline did keep me very much engaged. I really enjoyed the storyline. I feel like at the end, everything kind of did come together as far as like knowing what exactly happened to her friend, as well as her childhood friend that drowned. Did I listen to it all on audiobook? I highly recommend the audiobook if you want to listen to the audiobook. I really enjoyed the person that was reading from the audiobook. I believe I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So yeah, highly recommend it. Also, I just finished Woman of Light by Cali Fajardo Anstein. This was a really good read. In this book, we're following a generation of, or 5 generations of our main character, Luz Lopez, aka Little Light. So it keeps shifting from present, past, between all the generations. So you're kind of reading about 3 or 5 generations. You're kind of reading about their history, about what they're doing in that present moment. This takes place in a very segregated Denver. I believe in the our main character, Luz Lopez, her story takes place in the 1930s, but we keep going back to her ancestors as well, which is like in the 1800s. So we keep going back and forth, and you really get to see in this book how the past reflects the future, because you're following also Luz Lopez ancestors as well as herself, and how everything has led to Luz Lopez, who she is today. You're mostly following Luz Lopez in her journey of trying to find herself, trying to support for her family, which is very hard in a very segregated Denver, and her being of indigenous Chicana descent. And you really get to see how much indigenous Chicanx people are treated by settlers that came into America and occupied many lands, and how much they really looked down on indigenous Chicanx people. It was really beautiful to see, you know, how it all unfolds, especially because you keep going back and forth between present moment and past moment, and you just kind of get a glimpse of like Luz Lopez's ancestors and their story, and how all those generations came to be into our main protagonist, which is Luz Lopez. There's love in here, there's betrayal, there is hardship in this book, loss, sadness, happiness, trying to find who you are. I really loved this book. I will say that I read this book in or I listened to this book on audio. I don't know what it was, but I couldn't connect to it as much as I felt like I could have, maybe if I would have just read it physically. But I had such a busy week this week that I just decided to listen to it on audiobook. But I just couldn't connect to it as much. I don't know if it was the person that was reading the book or what it was, but I couldn't connect to it. Also, I am trying to get more into nonfiction books, and I don't know if that had something to do with it, because nonfiction is usually not my cup of tea. I am more of a fiction type of reader. So this was one of my first nonfiction books that I've read this year, but I still really enjoyed the book. I seen myself a lot in this book. I seen my ancestors, my family a lot in this book, and I connected to it in that format. So highly recommend this book. Also Woman of Light, and also Cali Fajardo Anstein. I read her previous book, Sabrina and Corina. I love that book too. So I highly recommend. All right, friends, thank you so much for watching. If you finished to the end this little reading vlog, please leave me a little book emoji. Let me know what you're currently reading down in the comments below. I would love to know what you're reading. I have lots of more content scheduled that is coming up, and I'm excited to share with you all more bookish content. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. I would really appreciate if you liked, comment, subscribed. It would really help out my channel. All right, friends, I'll see you soon.